Hi, I'm Susan Keefe from Rhubarb and Cod, and today I'm making bourbon sweet potato pie with molasses meringue. We're at the doorstep of Christmas, and what would a holiday table be without a show-stopping dessert? Sure, everyone will claim they're too full, but the second they see this bourbon sweet potato pie come around the corner, I'm willing to bet they'll find room. Sweet potato pie hails from the southern United States and has its roots in African American cuisine. Although the sweet potato is native to Central and South America, sweet potato pie is thought to be West African in origins. The sweet potato was most likely used by enslaved people as a stand-in for yam, which is far more common in West Africa. Recipes for sweet potato pie appear in print as early as the 18th century and were often featured alongside savory dishes. But from the 19th century on, sweet potato pie has been faithfully classified as a dessert. People often think of sweet potato pie as a stand-in for pumpkin, but trust me, it has its own thing going on. Today, we're playing with this classic by adding a shot of bourbon as a tribute to its southern US roots and giving it a crown of toasted molasses meringue. So let's get started. We're going to start by tackling the pastry. Now, every holiday season, I'm confronted with a conundrum. Do I make pumpkin or pecan pie? It's always a tough call, and it's tougher since I've become acquainted with the charms of sweet potato pie. But I've found a slight workaround by adding chopped pecans to my pastry. Sure, you won't mistake it for true blue pecan pie, but it will give you that nice buttery nut hit that you're looking for. So we're going to start by coarsely chopping half a cup of pecans. You've seen this recipe before in my coconut cream pie recipe. No, I'm sorry.
The Department of Redundancy Department.
I know. Let's work on expanding our vocabulary, shall we? You've seen it before in my coconut cream pie video. Pour 1 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour into a large bowl. Add a tablespoon of granulated sugar and half a teaspoon of kosher salt. You can walk back the amount of salt you use here. I just like my pastry to be on the edge of savory to contrast against the sweet filling. But if you're more of a sweet person, cut the salt in half. Your pastry will be no worse for the wear. Now add the pecans you chopped earlier and whisk to combine. To this mixture, add 1 stick or half a cup of cold unsalted butter cut into cubes. Toss the cubes lightly with your hands to ensure they're evenly coated with flour. Roll the cubes through your thumbs and index fingers to create thin sheets of butter. Keep working the butter into the flour until the mixture resembles coarse breadcrumbs. Working with cold hands yields the best results, so if your hands run hot, place them under cold water for a few minutes before plunging in. Even with cold hands, we want to be light and quick with our movements. Let's not melt the butter. Once the butter is rubbed into the flour, add a 1/4 cup of ice-cold water. Only add as much water as you need to get the dough to come together. You might not need it all. And the dough shouldn't be uniform. It should be a shaggy mess. And once your mess is together, which sounds like an oxymoron, transfer it to the counter and lightly knead it into a ball. Once again, cold hands work best for this. And don't dawdle. We just want to knead it enough to get it to come together. Finally, press the dough into a disc and chill for at least 1 hour. While the dough is chilling, preheat the oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Place the sweet potatoes on a baking sheet lined with parchment paper and prick them all over with a fork. Once the oven is up, place the potatoes on the middle rack and roast for a minimum of 1 hour. We want the potatoes to be practically mush inside when we take them out of the oven. So if a fork doesn't pass through them like a hot knife through butter, put them back in for an additional 15 minutes. While the potatoes are in the oven, sorry, I said that really fast. While the potatoes are in the oven, roll the pastry out to an 1/8 of an inch of thick. While the potatoes are in the oven, roll the pastry out to about an 1/8 of an inch of thick. 1/8 of an inch of thickness. 1/8 of an inch thick. 1/8 of an inch thickness. 1/8 of an inch thickness. An 1/8 of an inch thick.
That took a while, but man, we got there.
While the potatoes are in the oven, roll the pastry out until an 1/8 of an inch thick. Line a 9-inch pie plate with the pastry and using your thumb and index fingers, crimp the edges. Transfer the pie to the freezer and let chill for 30 minutes. Once the 30 minutes have passed, dock the pastry and cover with parchment paper. Fill the center with dried beans and transfer to the oven. Bake the pie crust for 25 to 30 minutes on the lower rack to encourage browning on the bottom while discouraging too much browning on top. Take the crust out of the oven and let cool slightly before removing the beans. You can still cook these beans at a later date, so don't discard them. Alternatively, you can store them to use them for this specific purpose again. By now, your potatoes should be done. Set them aside until cool enough to handle. Slice down the center lengthwise and remove the skins. They should come off quite easily. Transfer the potatoes to a large bowl and mash until quite smooth. Whisk in 1 room temperature egg until fully integrated. Add another egg and once again whisk until fully integrated. Next, add half a cup of light brown sugar, roughly 1 teaspoon of grated fresh ginger, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, half a teaspoon of ground ginger, half a teaspoon of nutmeg, half a teaspoon of ground cardamom, and half a teaspoon of kosher salt. Pour in 2 tablespoons of melted unsalted butter and stir to combine. Pour in 1½ cups of half and half and stir until well integrated. Finally, add 1/4 cup of bourbon and stir once again. Pour the filling into the pie crust. You might have some filling left over. The amount of filling you have will depend on the size of the sweet potatoes you selected. If you do have any left, just pop them into ramekins and bake them alongside the pie for 20 minutes. Then dip into them whenever you need a quiet moment alone with your fridge. It's the holidays, it will happen. Smooth the surface of the pie and transfer it to a 350-degree oven. Bake for 55 to 60 minutes or until set on the edges and still a little wobbly in the center. Transfer the pie to a cooling rack and let cool completely. With the pie baked, it's time to tackle the molasses meringue. Today we're going to be following the Italian method for making meringue. The only alteration we're going to make is adding a tablespoon of fancy molasses to the sugar mixture. The molasses gives the meringue a warmer, deeper flavor and a gorgeous golden hue. We're going to start by separating 4 large eggs. Reserve the yolks for a future recipe and set the egg whites aside. In a small saucepan, pour 1 cup of granulated sugar, half a cup of water, and 1 tablespoon of fancy molasses. Place the mixture over high heat and stir to combine. Continue to cook the mixture until it registers 240 degrees Fahrenheit on a candy thermometer. While the sugar mixture is cooking, add half a teaspoon of cream of tartar to the egg whites and whisk until soft peaks form. This will require you to divide your attention so you can monitor the progress of each simultaneously. I would recommend doing this in a stand mixer as it frees up your hands quite a bit. I used a hand mixer for this to show you the process a little bit better, but I do think it's safer to use a stand mixer if you have access to one, and I'll show you why in just a minute. Once the sugar mixture reaches its target temperature, whisk it into the egg whites in a slow, continuous stream. This mixture is extremely hot, so try your best to keep your fingers clear. A stand mixer has much higher walls, which in my opinion keeps your digits safer and your backsplash cleaner. But a clear mixing bowl and a hand mixer shows off the meringue making process so much better. The things I do for you. Once the meringue is whipped, pile it onto the pie and using the back of your spoon, create a series of pleasing swoops. I like using Italian meringue for pie in particular because the egg whites are already cooked and safe to eat. Use a culinary torch to toast the meringue. Once the meringue is toasted, all that remains is to slice and serve and soak in the admiration and praise. And there you go, bourbon sweet potato pie with molasses meringue. I hope you give this a try, and if it does make it onto your holiday baking list, let me know how it went in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to this channel. I post a new recipe every week and a ton of goodies along the way. Thank you for baking with me, happy holidays, and I'll see you all again soon.